did know, obviously, the behavior was very inappropriate.
When MK was a 15-year-old in 2006, the Prince Edward County Children's Aid Society placed her in a foster home run by a young couple, Joe and Janet Holmes. MK, whose identity is under a publication ban, remembers what happened when one of two other teenage girls in the home complained to Children's Aid about Joe Holmes' sexually inappropriate behavior.
They had asked us if that had actually happened, and we said yes. We witnessed this happening, and he was told not to do it again. And it was left at that. So when the behavior began to progress with me, I almost kind of felt in a sense that this was normal.
Over the next 3 years, Joe sexually abused MK. Janet covered it up.
Like, we were actually even told by my foster mother that my foster father was not to be present when they would do the annual visits. And that was actually a suggestion from people who worked at Children's Aid, because he was not necessarily able to cover up his behavior.
The Holmes pleaded guilty in 2011 to a number of sexual abuse offenses against MK and other children in their care. A judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison, her to 3. But theirs wasn't the only case. Another 4 Prince Edward County foster parents were convicted of sexually abusing their foster children. So many convictions in such a small jurisdiction led the government to launch a review of the county's Children's Aid Society.
I honestly felt like I was going to die.
Nathan Williams aged out of the foster care system, ended up homeless, and raped a teenage girl in 2013. He's 25 years old and behind bars at MCI Norfolk. He takes responsibility for his crime, but says the abuse he suffered in foster care is partially to blame.
It's hard to look at myself sometimes and know what I've done, and I'm sorry for what I've done, truly. And I try to better myself every day because of that.
He told us the trauma from what happened to him as a child destroyed him.
He would throw us outside in the middle of the winter. You know, I'd be naked, and I remember he had this big detergent bottle that he filled with water, and he put it outside with me while I'm out there shivering naked. And he'd bring me inside and put me in the tub full of ice cubes and make me sit there. And if I moved, then he'd beat me.
His foster mother's boyfriend smeared dog feces on his brother when Nathan didn't clean up after the family's dogs. Psychiatric records say Nathan was even forced to drink his own urine. The boys said they were both routinely beaten with the metal buckle of a dog leash and more.
They're heartless individuals. It wasn't just beating. He basically treated me like a slave.
In the end, it wasn't a teacher, police, or a social worker who stopped the abuse. It was John who, at the age of 12, got off the school bus and kept going. That led to a dozen criminal counts of assault and child endangerment against his foster mother and her live-in boyfriend.
Yeah, and at that time, all we knew was that a child had died and the case was under investigation. That line, the case is under investigation, is the same thing we heard from San Diego County month after month after month. That's all that they'd tell us. Then we uncovered the child's name, Tyler James Walter. A medical examiner says Tyler died from blunt head trauma. This is his story.
Happy, smiling, giggling. This is what you'd expect to see from a toddler. But this child's life didn't start like this, and it sure didn't end like this. See report, they state Tyler was only fed formula for the first year and a half of his life and was considered to be malnourished and behind on his milestones. He was taken from his mom after the house where she was staying was raided. Investigators say narcotics were found in baby food containers. Tyler's mother gave me these videos and pictures, but wouldn't do an interview. She loved him, but the investigators' report paints a picture that's a far cry from the mother and son captured in these home videos. He was placed in the care of his cousin. She became his foster parent at the end of July 2018. We've discovered she was only 19 years old at the time. They moved into a home that was also operating as a daycare in Long Beach. That's in LA County, about 100 miles north of San Diego. Investigators' notes say the child was doing better, making progress. Then there was an argument, and Tyler and the 19-year-old foster parent left the house they'd been living in. According to his autopsy report, the day Tyler died, he was fussy and didn't eat much. It says that evening, Tyler, his foster parent, and another person drove to the park not far from where they were staying. They parked, unbuckled Tyler from his car seat, and someone started smoking marijuana. A short time later, they noticed Tyler was slumped over.
According to the investigators' report, Tyler stopped breathing in the car. They got him out, brought him to a table here in the park, and started screaming for help. But by that point, it was already too late.
Official cause of death? Blunt head trauma.
They found subdural hematomas.
We showed Tyler's autopsy report to Dr. Howard Robin. He's an anatomic and clinical pathologist with no connection to this case.
Questions surround the death of a newborn baby who died in foster care. Now, the I-Team has uncovered a document which reveals the foster parents were previously investigated for neglect in an unrelated case more than 2 years ago. Now, in this exclusive interview, the child's grandmother is looking for answers. As Vanessa Murphy reports, this isn't the first tragedy for the family this year.
This is Isai Joel.
The only thing that I want is justice.
This is Isai's grandmother. She's asked the I-Team to protect her identity. Last April, her daughter was stabbed to death in a parking lot right in front of her. Metro police say the killer is her ex-boyfriend. She was a new mom to baby Isai. The grandmother says Child Protective Services, or CPS, took custody of the infant the same day. She says she expected they would soon be reunited, and in the meantime, she prepared to permanently care for him.
I need my grandson back because I'm going to be ready, okay, to have him.
She says she repeatedly reached out to a CPS caseworker to ask to be reunited with her grandson.
I am ready to get him. I'm ready. And I was very happy, okay? He never returned my messages.
At 2 months and 14 days old, Isai died at University Medical Center after an incident in the master bedroom of a foster family assigned to care for him. That's 26 days after the grandmother says CPS took custody of him. Isai's cause of death is pending. We also obtained this child fatality disclosure, which states the Department of Family Services received a report that the child had been found unresponsive in his crib by his foster parent. It also states that the same foster parents were previously investigated. A report was received alleging neglect in 2018 for at least one other child in their care. The allegations in that case were found unsubstantiated.
An Indiana foster mother says a 4-year-old who spent most of his life under her roof died months after a court ordered him to be reunited with his birth parents. Gina Hullett said she tried to alert the Department of Child Services of abuse happening inside his birth parents' home for years, but was ignored. Tonight, our Madison Stacy has a story behind a heartbreaking case, now prompting new legislation at the State House.
Just everything's a constant reminder. Dandelions. He would squat down and pick up the little flower, the dandelion.
Judah is not Gina Hollett's biological son, but from the start, he was always her baby boy.
He called me mommy, called my husband daddy. My kids were his siblings.
At 4 years old, he was already a comedian.
Cheese. He liked to dance. He loved to dance.
Baby.
That's you.
Baby.
When Judah was born in 2017, Hullett discovered he was placed in foster care. As Judah's second cousin, the Department of Child Services arranged a kinship placement so Judah could be surrounded by family. That also meant Judah was required to spend some of his time in the home of his biological parents. Early on, Hullett suspected abuse at the home.
It's very, very sweet and loving up until he would have visits and then he would come home angry.
Hullett says she tried multiple times to alert DCS to the potential abuse, but that they never acted on her claims.
I'm screaming for help and nobody's listening.
But Hullett at least knew he would be safe once he got in her arms. Judah seemed to know that too.
I was mourning him then, but I always had hope that we would see him again. I even told my husband I'm going to start writing him letters so when he gets older, I want him to know that we always loved him.
But those are words of love Judah never grew old enough to hear. On October 11th, police found 4-year-old Judah, the boy who loved music and dandelions, dead on a bedroom floor of his parents' home.
A young girl escaped from the home that's just down this road. She was able to find someone who took her to the police station. That's where she told them what was happening to her and her brother and sister.
Very brave, very brave.
Carroll County investigators say 3 siblings were being fostered by the family who lives in this house. Earlier this summer, one of the children ran away from the home and told police she and her brother and sister were being abused.
It's a very heartbreaking case.
According to arrest warrants, the teenage girl was forced to carry a book bag filled with bricks as she was made to clean baseboards as punishment, and food was often withheld.
The victim that ran away actually said that she had to eat out of the dog's bowl to be able to get food.
Investigators say there were cameras throughout the house, and according to warrants, the teenage boy was placed under surveillance camera for hours at a time in a sparse room. The foster parents, Edward and Elizabeth Holmes, were arrested on a number of felonies, including child abuse. Their adult children, Brianna, Edward Jr., and Andrew, who also lived in the home, were also arrested for aiding in committing child abuse.
Diane and Tim Combs were considered one of the premier foster families in Dearborn County. They cared for dozens of kids over the course of 4 years, but both are now convicted of abusing those children. This video shows 2 of the younger children in their care being abused last July. That led to Tim Combs pleading guilty earlier this month, his wife entering a guilty plea today. Diane Combs will serve a 20-year prison sentence on battery charges. The abuse being caught on camera by another teenage foster child in the house is the whole reason prosecutors say they were able to build a case.
Video was critical in the case because these were children that have been taken away from their parents because mom and dad have issues, and sometimes these children aren't always believed of what's going on in a house, especially if it's a good foster family.
Our investigation exposed years of abuse of foster children inside the Bluins home in the early 2000s. Now we've discovered another allegation of abuse made a decade earlier. And despite that red flag, the state continued to place foster children in that home.
The Bluins just destroyed kids. They just caused, in some cases, more trauma than where the kids came from in the first place.
Sarah Fournier recalls the horror of being abused as a young girl and witnessing the abuse of other children inside the state-licensed foster home of Sue and Ray Bluen.
I can't imagine treating anybody's child that badly.
She was placed with the Bluens in 1990 when she was just 9 years old, too afraid to tell anyone what was happening, fearing retaliation. But she eventually broke her silence. She remembers telling a social worker she and her little brother were being abused, hoping they would be removed from the Bluens Oxford home. Instead, she says the social worker told the Bluens, putting her at greater harm.
And Sue grabbed me by the neck and pushed me down the stairs. And I hit the wall on the way down. The system failed because they were told and they didn't listen.
Sarah's mother regained custody of her children months later. During a therapy session in 1991, Sarah's revelations about what happened at the Bluens home finally triggered this 51A report alleging abuse that was filed with the Department of Social Services, now DCF. The therapist reported Sarah also expressed concerns about the treatment of her little brother and a young girl with special needs, saying the Bluens yelled at the child because she ate too slow. But records show social workers investigating found no serious abuse or neglect.
I don't know why they continued to place kids in that home, why they repeatedly ignored all the reports. I have no idea. Someone needs to hold DCF accountable.
The state continued to cycle children through the home for years. 5 investigates uncovered.
I remember them buckling me in the car, and I asked them where I was going, and they said somewhere safe. Yeah. It wasn't safe at all.
I think the average community member would be shocked to know that in our children's shelter, there are literally thousands of calls to the police to respond to children who are in crisis or who are being teenagers, and that hundreds of those result in arrests.
They said it's because I barricaded myself in the room, but it's not like when they came into the room I was like attacking them, or I mean it was two grown men. I was like maybe like 100 pounds at the time, and then they put me into the cop car. So I don't know, I guess I was like in the back of the cop car, like feeling helpless, like who's gonna help me? Like nobody was helping me. I knew that there was nothing I could do, you know, like I felt ashamed, like I didn't do what I did because like it was fun. Like I obviously did it because there was something wrong, and like I wasn't feeling okay. But then to have these like two grown men like pretty much beat me up that don't even know me or like know anything that I'm going through.
My childhood life, it was like our everyday life was just a struggle, you know? And I was the one kid my mom never wanted, I guess. And so I got the rift of everything, you know? She's having a bad day, I'd get beaten for it. I turned everything into anger. I was angry. And really what I was scared and alone. Wanted to be loved. Instead of giving me help, they gave me a juvenile hall cell, you know?
It's not intentional. It's not even conscious. It's reaction. It's fight or flight.
Some of the most common incidents that we see young people literally taken into the back of a police car include very low-level vandalism, property crimes, getting into fights with other youth in the home.
When they blow up in a moment, it's just, I'm either going to run or I'm going to fight.
But I was so scared. I remember I went to that room and I was so alone and cold. That room was so cold. Metal toilet with a sink and a little water fountain and a brick bed. That's all you had. And a window that was this big, you know?
Who were there for like gang violence and like prostitution and murder. And I was there because I like had vandalized the house.
Today, I am using crystal meth. I'm homeless. And I'm living a shitty life, and all it is I wanted to self-medicate because I had an adult life. Because I've never taught how to cope with life situations. I was always secluded, put in jail.
Become a man very quickly.
I was born and raised on the east side of Buffalo, New York. I'm one of 8 children. I was raised in a single-parent home. My mother raised me and my siblings by herself. My grandfather, he was never in my mother's life, and my grandmother, she battled with drug abuse, so she died at a very young age. My mother was forced to become a parent and an adult at a very young age, and she juggled with that, and it was very difficult for her at first. My father was never really in my life, so my mom really had to manage and raise 8 children by herself. Growing up was very dysfunctional for me and my siblings. We were both physically and verbally abused. We would go to school and I would have bruises on my arms, and the teachers would notice that. And before you know it, Child Protective Services was involved. I think I was about 8 or 9 when I first entered the system. That's foster care, and my siblings and I, we were all divided into different foster homes. I ended up being bounced around from different foster homes. I went in very optimistic and energetic and happy, and then I became very introverted because I was constantly being placed in a temporary position. Throughout my entire experience, I was in over 10 different foster homes, and it was hard for me to open up to people that I was only spending a short amount of time with.
They had people lined up. It wasn't like it was a mystery, like, gee, I wonder where should we place the baby. Reeling in grief, fighting for answers, the youngest member of their family found dead. And tonight, relatives left wondering why he was put in a foster home when they wanted to care for him.
That's right. 10 News reporter Emily Thode is in Scripps Ranch tonight with a 10 News exclusive on why say the system is screwed up.
His family tells me that there was a bunch of qualified family members ready to take him in, and the baby had no business being in foster care.
This is his bassinet.
The Thomas home in Carlsbad is filled with baby items, seemingly frozen in time. They all belong to 3-month-old Zane Thomas.
His nickname was Wolfgang Thomas.
Child Protective Services took Zane away from his mother, Kimberly, shortly after he was born.
Had to find out that he was moved to a foster parent's home.
Mom was struggling with a drug addiction. Ulysses Thomas is Zane's uncle.
And foster parents should work if the young lady doesn't have family in the state, doesn't have anyone to go to. That's a foster parent. But we had grandma, we had family friends.
They say baby Zane was already in grandma's care up to 5 days a week.
I was so happy when he was with me, so happy.
They say CPS finally granted grandma full custody starting in October. September 8th, one of the few days of the week CPS had baby Zane in foster care, he died.
I cried day and night.
Police believe it was a medical condition, but the autopsy is not complete.
They just dropped the ball. I feel helpless, no answers. I feel ignored.
10 News reached out to CPS. A spokesperson would not talk about this specific case, but said procedure is always to keep the child with the biological family first.
The family is calling for an outside audit of Zane Thomas's case. We'll keep you posted. In Carlsbad, Emily Thode, 10 News.
Do you want to know how to save your marriage, whether your husband is on board or not? If your marriage is stuck, breaking or broken, and you're losing connection with your beautiful husband, then this is for you. If that's not you, then go ahead and click skip. But if that is you, then pay very close attention.
And a woman charged with manslaughter and child neglect in the death of a 4-year-old boy, James Reese Jr., is now out of jail while she awaits trial. The cause of the boy's death was found to be blunt force trauma and was ruled a homicide. News4JAX reporter Bree Isom joins us live. Bree, you spoke with the 4-year-old's mother today.
I did, and she said that she got a notification through the Vine system that Michelle Sipko bonded out on Friday. Now, she believes that she should have never bonded out, and here's why. Carissa Garcia is the mother of James Reese Jr., the 4-year-old boy who died in April after a doctor says he was thrown in a tub and hit with a belt. The cause of his death was blunt force trauma, and it was ruled a homicide. At the time of his death, Garcia said she did not have custody of her children because she was a victim of domestic violence. Michelle Sipko, the boy's foster mother and Garcia's cousin, was charged with manslaughter and child neglect in James's death. Her bond was originally set at $750,000 for each charge, but this week it was reduced to a total of $325,000.
I wish there was no bond, especially when you either hurt a child or killed a child.
Sipko's lawyer says in this court document that she has no criminal history and isn't a threat to the public, but Garcia disagrees. And Garcia is disappointed in her family.
I didn't think my own flesh and blood would hurt one of my kids.
Garcia's brother, Christopher Nastasi, says he's learned things that make him not trust Sipko.
The 9-year-old, the oldest sibling, had enough sense to know her brother was in enough pain. And Michelle's reply to her was, "We don't call 911 in this household."
According to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office's booking page, her location is HD1, which is home detention. 30-year-old Alex Pino, the boy's foster father, has been charged with second-degree murder and child abuse. He's being held without bond as he awaits his trial. A preacher.
A little boy's foster parents are now in jail, charged in his death. The uncle of 4-year-old James Reese says his family is now one step closer to justice.
I do have a little bit of relief at the fact to know that the wheels of justice are turning in our favor now.
And News for Jax reporter Janice Harris is live at police headquarters where the foster parents had their first appearance before a judge. Janice.
They just had that first appearance in the last hour, but this all began a month ago when that little boy was fighting for his life. Police said today that it was his foster parents that led to his death.
This 4-year-old boy, James Reese, arrived at Wolfson's Children's Hospital fighting for his life. 6 days later, he died from severe injuries. Police say his foster parents, 30-year-old Alexander Pino and 38-year-old Michelle Sipko, caused his death. Reese's uncle, Christopher Nastasi, recalls the day he learned his nephew had died.
I was in a nightmare and that this was not true and that, that it was too horrific to believe.
This arrest warrant says James Reese was taken to Wolfson's Children's Hospital unresponsive and needed life-saving surgery. His injuries prompted a call to the Department of Children and Families. Pino has been arrested for second-degree murder and aggravated child abuse. Sipko has been arrested for manslaughter and aggravated child neglect. Nastasi hopes this is the beginning of justice for his nephew.
I do have a little bit of relief at the fact to know that the wheels of justice are turning in our favor now and that, James will get justice and that his death was not overlooked and just set to the side.
Justice for a little boy that police say was harmed by those that were supposed to protect him.
Calls for San Diego County to stop placing children at a state licensed home for local youth in the North County. And good evening. I'm Steve Atkinson.
And I'm Kimberly Hunt. That comes after a Team 10 investigation uncovered a series of disturbing incidents at the home. Tonight, there is legal action against the county. And Team 10 investigator Adam Rakusin is joining us in studio. And a lawmaker is now taking action at the state level, Adam?
Yeah, Kim, this is the letter that State Senator Brian Jones has sent the Committee on Health and Human Services. It asked for a Senate hearing on Assembly Bill 403. That's the law that created these short-term residential treatment facilities like the one in the North County that we've been reporting on. In the letter, the senator cited our reporting and now wants to know how the law is working and if there needs to be changes. That's one new development. Earlier today, a legal action was filed against the county alleging wrongful death. Now, the claim, which is what comes before a lawsuit, alleges the County of San Diego did not keep Isaiah Shane safe while he was in their care. Isaiah Shane died in May of this year. According to his autopsy report, he was found unresponsive in the bathroom of his group home and later died at the hospital from a drug overdose. The claim alleges San Diego County failed to provide adequate monitoring, protection, and supervision to Isaiah. At a press conference earlier today, Isaiah's mother, Amanda, read a short statement.
It is imperative that every child within the custody of San Diego County or the state of California be kept alive and be given proper medical and mental health care.
The home is operated by the nonprofit Circle of Friends. Records obtained by Team 10 show nearly 350 police calls to the address listed for the facility from 2017 through the middle of September of this year. Police records show they responded to everything from runaway juveniles to alleged drug use and threats of violence. In March 2021, a state investigation report showed an inappropriate relationship with one of the minors. A staff member was arrested. Local civil rights leader Shane Harris called on the county to stop placing kids with Circle of Friends.
What we are dealing with is a county that fails to address the issues pertaining to our foster care system. What we're dealing with is a county leadership that is failing to demonstrate doing what they say they're doing when they take kids from their parents.
Sam, thank you. A system meant to keep the most vulnerable children safe is failing. 13 Investigates has uncovered troubling details about what led up to the death of a 15-month-old foster child in Pueblo West last year.
That death, the devastating result of red flags that were ignored by the very people tasked with protecting children. Dan Beatty explains in this 13 Investigates special report, Failure to Protect.
Aiden. Is that Sissy?
This is Aiden Seeley. His parents say Aiden was always happy and loved to play with his siblings, and his first word was Da for dad. But at 15 months old, Aiden was cremated at Roselawn Cemetery in Pueblo. Prosecutors say the little boy was murdered.
Aiden Seeley was in the care and custody of DHS at the time he was brutally murdered, and the parents want to know exactly what happened on that fateful day.
Aiden was put into the foster care system as his parents were trying to turn their lives around, hoping to eventually regain custody. Days before his death, they saw their son one final time during a visit at a DHS facility.
They did notice that he was a bit lethargic, that he wasn't the Aiden that they knew. He wasn't this energetic, this happy-go-lucky little boy that they've always known, and they voiced those concerns.
24 hours later, Aiden was unresponsive and rushed to the hospital, where he died on September 18th. Aiden's parents are now begging Pueblo County for answers with the help of their lawyer, Richard Arona.
Looking at these kids that are in foster care, they're the most vulnerable in our society. And when the county comes in and takes responsibility for them, that's a huge responsibility.
Pueblo DHS placed Aiden along with 3 other foster children into this Pueblo West home, the home of 31-year-old Daisy Spinuzzi and her 36-year-old boyfriend, Ramondo Jones. Both were responsible for Aiden's safety and well-being. 2 months later, both were arrested and charged in connection to the toddler's murder and abuse. According to transcripts from a court hearing obtained by 13 Investigates, the extent of Aiden's injuries included a fracture to his arm, a missing toenail, and a broken toe. Prosecutors said Aiden was tortured. Aiden was placed into the home in July 2020, but according to testimony in court, abuse and violence was already going on in the household. Court transcripts show Spinuzzi says she was abused frequently by Jones, both physically and sexually, and often in front of the children. The testimony revealed that when Spinuzzi left the home, the abuse didn't stop. Jones would turn his wrath on the children. One foster child was struck hard enough on the leg that it left a handprint and bruising. An expert psychologist who reviewed the Aiden Seeley case said under oath Spinuzzi had informed DHS of injuries to the foster children, and the response she got back was always the same. Quote, "We know this is a rough bunch of kids. Don't worry about it." 13 Investigates asked Pueblo County DHS about this allegation, and they would not comment on it.
Surprised to hear of the amount of abuse that was taking place in that household. And not only the amount of abuse and frankly torture that was going on in that house, but how it was undertaken for an extended period of time, and how obvious it was to not only those that were living in that house, but the friends and neighbors as to what was going on in that house. And it should have been obvious.
10 years ago, a little boy lost his life at the hands of his foster parents. The tragic life of 3-year-old Marcus Faisal, that is, captured the hearts and minds of the entire tri-state, in fact.
Yeah, and thousands of you searched in vain for that little boy who was already dead. And thousands more of you sat stunned when you heard at home how he died.
9 on Your Side anchor Tanya O'Rourke takes you back 10 years to when this story first broke, and she looks ahead at what's really changed all these years later.
My husband, myself, nobody harmed him. Nobody hurt him.
We suspected her from the very start that she knew what happened to this kid.
August of 2006, on the day that Liz Carroll, foster mother to Marcus Faisal, stood in Juliff's Park pleading for someone to find her son.
Remember, the whole town was turned upside down looking for this little kid.
Hundreds of volunteers had searched the Hamilton County Park for days and days on what they did not realize was a fool's errand. Liz's husband, David, took a lie detector test.
Like my husband said, he doesn't believe that was accurate.
13 days later, the stunning announcement from Hamilton County Prosecutor Joe Dieters. Liz and David Carroll had killed the boy they were charged with caring for.
I mean, we're missing our son.
It's a horrible thing that they did to this baby. They could hear him screaming in the closet when they left.
A closet, Dieters says, where the temperatures reached between 105 and 115 degrees. David and Liz had a live-in lover, Amy Baker. David and Baker took Marcus's body to this old chimney and burned him over and over again. Then they chucked what was left in the Ohio River.
That was Marcus Faisal. What's left of Marcus Faisal would fit in this cup.
Liz Carroll got a 54-year sentence. This is part of Prosecutor Woody Breyer's closing statement.
And who did it? She did. And you know, they say you wouldn't treat a dog like that. And you know what? She wouldn't. She took the dog with her. She took the dog with her.
I love my children with all my heart and soul.
David Carroll cut a deal. He got 15 years to life. And those left behind?
It really changed a lot of people who were involved in the case.
Not just people, legislation. In 2009, the Ohio Supreme Court adopted Rule 49, which provides what's called guardian ad litems for each foster child. That person is the liaison between the court and the foster system. Ohio also revoked Lifeway for Youth's license. That's the foster care company that placed Marcus with the Carrolls, and Ohio Job and Family Services says it has increased mandatory training for caseworkers and put greater emphasis on placing foster kids in permanent adoptive homes. Too late for Marcus, but perhaps not for thousands who follow. Tanya O'Rourke, 9 on Your Side.
5 Investigates has learned that the district attorney's office is investigating the death of a 3-month-old who was in foster care at this home behind the fence here in Methuen. That infant died on April 25th. A woman who answered the door would not comment or confirm the case, but we do know that Methuen police say they are investigating. Right now, we don't know any details or circumstances of that infant's death. On Wednesday, the district attorney announced a 15-month-old who was also in foster care died at Lawrence General Hospital Sunday morning after being found unresponsive. The girl was taken to the hospital and pronounced dead a short time later. Officials said she showed no obvious signs of trauma. In that case, sources told 5 Investigates the child had been sick for several days. We're still waiting on an official cause of death from the medical examiner's office. And sources told 5 Investigates that a 3rd death occurred in Haverhill, but additional details on that have not been confirmed. We have reached out for DCF for comment on this, but so far have not heard back. Live in Methuen, Katie Thompson, WCVB News Center.
I had plans on him coming home. I told him he was coming home.
A mother trying to understand why, while also questioning how her 11-month-old son died in CPS custody. Hi, and good evening. I'm Steve Eager. First on Fox 4 News at 5:30 tonight. An 11-month-old boy has died in the care of a CPS foster family. The medical examiner hasn't determined the cause of death at this point, but Duncanville police say there were no outward signs of foul play. The boy's mom says she saw him on Thursday and everything seemed just fine then. Fox 4's Natalie Solis in the newsroom with more on the story. Natalie?
Well, Steve, this mom wants to know why her seemingly healthy baby boy suddenly died in someone else's care. She says it all happened while she was fighting to get him back.
And I said, "Can you walk?" And I said, "Let's see, can you walk?" I put my baby down. He started lifting those legs up as strong as can be.
26-year-old Miracle Washington recalling Thursday's supervised visit with her son Isaiah Wright and the baby's father. It would be the last time they'd see him alive. Saturday, a call from CPS.
And I said, "What do you mean an accident?" Because I'm thinking, I'm hoping it was just an injury. I never ever thought that she would be calling me to tell me about the death of my child.
In a statement, the Department of Family and Protective Services, which oversees CPS, says DFPS is investigating the death of Isaiah Wright, who died while in a foster care placement. While the cause of his death is still unknown, the loss of this child's life is a tragedy, and DFPS investigators are rigorously examining the foster home and the agency that operates it.
I don't know where I'm gonna go with my baby. Please help me.
Washington says she called CPS to intervene in late January when she'd fallen on hard times and feared being homeless. Her 3-year-old son staying with relatives. CPS says it stepped in due to neglect.
Within the first visitation, I had a job.
Washington says since Isaiah went into CPS care, she got a job and an apartment, never missed a weekly visitation, complied with all court-ordered requirements, and requested for her child to be returned. Washington says at the very least, Isaiah would have spent his final hours of his short life with her.
And I felt as soon as my baby came back home, it was going to be complete.
Well, CPS says that a judge would have had to have made the determination if a child is able to go back to the biological parents. Washington says she had done everything she could. She says her next court date was set for July 18th, which would have been Isaiah's first birthday. Steve.
All right, Natalie, so Family Services in their release said they're going to vigorously investigate the foster family and what happened. What do we know so far about the foster family?
Right. Well, CPS does have contractors that handle family placement and monitor that family's care of a foster child. In this case, that company happens to be called Giacosa Foundation. Now, I did speak to somebody in Giacosa's Austin office. He said that they're grieving for both the biological and the foster families, and they're investigating the death. He says he couldn't talk about the family's history as foster parents, but I can tell you that Giacosa Foundation has been working with CPS since 1988. This is the first time that a child has died in its care, but it's also had 10 violations over the last 2 years. All were classified by CPS as medium to high risk level. Steve.
5 Investigates has learned that the district attorney's office is investigating the death of a 3-month-old who was in foster care at this home behind the fence here in Methuen. That infant died on April 25th. A woman who answered the door would not comment or confirm the case, but we do know that Methuen police say they are investigating. Right now, we don't know any details or
A disabled child dies in foster care.
When you look back on what happened, what goes through your mind?
5 Investigates Kathy Curran questions about the girl's care at the home where we already uncovered claims of abuse and neglect.
Children removed from bad circumstances, put in worse circumstances.
5-year-old Nevaeh Guerrier was in her 5th foster home when an ambulance rushed her to the hospital last year, where she was pronounced dead.
They said, as far as they know, that she fell down the stairs.
Her grandmother, Nancy Rodriguez, spent years battling the Department of Children and Families for custody of Nevaeh and 3 other grandchildren.
They said that the denial was because of a criminal record.
WBZ's I-Team ran a Corey check on Rodriguez. No felonies, but it only goes back a couple years. It was her driving record that had problems. We found more than 40 road violations over 3 decades, including 1 OUI 14 years ago.
Do you feel you had the resources to safely raise your grandchildren?
Absolutely.
She says a social worker kept the kids from talking about their foster home.
One time I did ask the oldest grandson, and he looked straight at her and he said, I can't tell you.
They were placed in an East Hampton community called Treehouse Circle, foster housing mixed with senior housing. It's held up as a model for success, but no one here wanted to talk with us about what happened to little Nevaeh.
Oh, it was a grave loss.
Except for East Hampton's mayor.
And I think everyone wants to know or have some kind of resolution.
The state medical examiner's office tells us it's the subject of a criminal investigation. And the DA's office says it's analyzing voluminous medical records. A source tells the I-Team investigators are focused on bruising and looking into whether people were staying at Nevaeh's foster home who had not had background checks. In a statement, DCF says it takes seriously its responsibility to keep kids safe and continues to work with the district attorney.
It's very frustrating.
When the I-Team asked for records, we found 177 DCF-involved children have died in the last 5 years, 32 in state custody. It's the job of the governor-appointed child advocate to hold the agency accountable.
In other words, right now, DCF reviews DCF.
State Representative Tricia Farley-Bouvier wants to create an office that's not tied to DCF to review its cases.
The system is not working. We need to take it outside the agency to bring that independent accountability.
And I just don't want this to happen to any other families.
The child advocate tells us the state makes every effort to keep DCF-involved children with their families, and that works for about 80% of the time. As for Nevaeh's foster home, DCF says it's been shut down.
We just want to thank everyone in the community for all the support we've seen. We've felt so helpless, and seeing everybody out here really looking and helping out really means a lot.
So, tell us what happened the night the kids went missing.
Okay. From our yard.
Okay. It was cold. I was gonna make a fire. There's a lot of wood in this area right here next to our house. I opened up the back gate. I'm throwing wood, bringing it inside the house. My wife's inside. She was actually wrapping gifts, so we thought it was a good idea that our youngest two would go outside and play with chalk on the back patio. Do not let them go on the dirt in the backyard. We keep them close. So I was playing with chalk, and I came in the house. I saw them there. I went in the house. I came back out. I didn't see them there. I immediately went back in, asked my wife, "Did you see the boys?" She said, "No, they should be outside playing with chalk." I said, "Well, I didn't see them," so I came back outside and I started searching my backyard. I searched the whole thing. I realized that I left the gate open and I panicked, came inside the house, searched the house, me and my wife. Once that didn't pan out, I got in the van. I looked down the street, most directions. It was getting dark, getting cold, and I got in the van and I hit a bunch of corners. I went down this street, I turned my light on, I searched, I called their names. Talked to a gentleman on the street on the other side over there. He didn't see anyone. So then I came home and I told my wife we need to call the cops. It's getting dark and I need help. We gotta get going. So I called the cops. Cops came. First thing they did was tell us to stay in the house so they can get a hold of us. And they had us just sitting there and we wanted to keep searching. But everybody came out in droves, and I wanted to thank you guys that night, but we couldn't go outside.
The cops told us the best are out here.
The best are out here searching, and we appreciate it. And nobody ever could tell. We could never talk to anybody, and that was the issue.
We just want to thank everybody.
We really want to thank you guys.
Please, if anybody has seen them, please call. Let somebody know.
Call the cops. Call California's the city police department. Call them and let them know what you've seen, if you see anything. Our boys, they are going to be rambunctious, okay? They are going to be here in this area. And I really would like to go in the houses, but it's not because I want to invade people's privacy. I just want to know if make sure. That's it. Because I don't, go ahead, I'm sorry, if you got any questions.
Oh, no, you're good.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to say, this is the first time we're hearing from you guys, and I can't imagine what you guys are going through. I can't even fathom it. For you guys, for people who are thinking that there's some kind of foul play involved, we just spoke to the biological mother. She says she had a conversation with you guys. and that she thinks there's some kind of foul play involved. That she thinks you guys did something.
And that's understandable.
What's your response to that?
That's understandable. I would think the same thing.
Yep.
I mean, that's exactly the point. And if we can find our babies, then guess what? That's no. And that's all I want is to find our babies. That's it. And I talked to her this morning, and I really wanted to tell her that I am completely sorry because we were entrusted with her children, and they came to us, and they became our children, and we named them, and they are our children, and so we want them back. So please, if y'all could get back on what you guys are doing, we should be able to get a hold of somebody, but they took all of our tech, so they wanted to, I guess, just rule us out, which makes sense. That's a part of the investigation. So that's pretty much it.
Have you guys, you talked to the police all last night?
Yes.
So you guys willfully gave them your
everything?
Technology,
yes.
The car?
Yes.
Did they how did they get a search warrant? Did you guys?
I don't see why they got one, but they got one.
Yeah,
we would have let them take
one,
anything. We would have let them take everything. We let them come in and search with us. We asked them to come do that.
What did they take?
Just tech. And that's it. Like our phones.
From the house, though, did they?
Oh, well, I guess, should I answer that? Or?
Answer it to us, yeah.
Okay. So, into the, okay, and I guess, I don't even know.
I see. Yeah, we seriously felt like we needed to be out here. We did. Again, we were told the best are out here looking already. Just to stay put, they have more questions. There was literally a cop with us the whole time in there.
He had sitting down. We would ask, can we go help? They had to sit down.
He said nope.
He said, no, we got the best out there.
So
we need
you
guys here in case we have more questions.
I don't want you guys thinking we didn't try. We actually looked before we called the police.
Yes.
And I imagine the mind-boggling part is the search for information. What happened? Where are they?
Yes.
Et cetera, et cetera.
And
and just so we are able to present the information correctly, at what time did you guys notice your kids went missing, and at what time were they reported missing to the police?
It's about, I think it was about 4:30, going on 5. It was getting dark, like I said.
5-ish.
5-ish. That's about it. That's when everything played out.
And then when did you guys call the police to report them missing?
After we searched
a
little bit around here, it was dark, so we definitely we got worried.
Would you say it was maybe within an hour, a couple hours?
No, it was within minutes of us getting finished with our search.
Okay.
It was within minutes.
Okay. What do you guys want people at home to understand about this situation? For them, even speaking about what you guys are feeling is difficult. What do you want them at home to understand about this whole situation?
We're going through it. It's difficult. I mean, everybody's making their own their own conclusions. They don't know anything. We're not sure like everything. We're not sure. We said what we knew, and if anybody has seen them or anything, please call the police department.
Would you be willing to provide pictures, or do you have any?
I have older pictures. All my newest were on my phone.
Okay.
A lot of people are speaking of this as, after the math, past tense. I want to talk about your kids in present tense. What kind of boys are these? Tell us about the boys.
Very playful, very rambunctious, and they do love to wrestle. They do love to kind of get rough with each other.
Kids.
They're kids. Of course, they would love to go out, but so during the pandemic, we weren't trying to go, out here, and so we stayed inside. Yes, we did. We searched before we called the cops. That's what we were saying.
What time did they come up missing?
They came missing right before it got dark. And then I searched that property. I even drove around this neighborhood right here. I even talked to a gentleman on that side, one of those streets over there. I said, did you see some little black kids?
You go that way looking for them?
That's the way I was going to come, but when I came back home, I decided to call the cops because it was dark. They couldn't have got away that fast.
And why did it take 2 people to go in the house and leave 2 kids out here by themselves? It should have been 1 parent going in and 1 parent right here watching the child, not 2 parents going in the house and leaving 2 little kids out here by themselves for 10 minutes.
No, they were in the backyard. And the back gate was open.
Out the backyard?
And the back gate was open, and I was getting wood from this lot here.
So you guys been unresponsible and left the gate open, left some little kids outside with the gate open.
All right. Sorry, you guys were talking about your boys who you're, I understand. For a mother's intuition, I know you were saying, and we'll get your names after this, but you were saying how you feel like they're in this area. Do you feel the same way? And what is the intuition? What is the sense you get? What do you think happened to your boys? Do you think someone took them? Do you think they're lost? Do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely know they're not walking around. They're not that kind. They do not just roam around. These patches. They definitely, I think definitely would have been picked up or something.
That was my assumption.
Have they ever taken off every yard before?
No.
No.
They've never taken off?
No. I came in the house, I saw them there.
Somebody knows something. They could be anywhere.
I came back out, I didn't see them now.
Y'all was supposed to take care of my nephew.
The tension in this community is just raising.
Things like this don't just happen out here.
It's been 20 days
for more than 100 days.
10 months since the West brothers went missing.
Have we searched the house? Absolutely. The backyard? Absolutely.
They will be found. And that's all I want is to find our babies.
Where are the boys?